It's going through all the places. We're live! Hi, everybody. It's Bonnie Gillespie with you on day 7 of SMF May. It is our 20 days of free training around self-management for actors, your favorite business book for your creative career. We are today diving in on some of my very, very, very favorite stuff. If you could please let me know that you're joining us, whether you're on Instagram I've got over here, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, pushing through to Twitter. I would love to see you in the comments just so I know that we've landed in all the places. We are using this restream technology to hit all the platforms at once, except for Instagram, because Instagram has to be different and it gets its very own device. Excellent. We've got Facebook present and accounted for. Good to see you, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining in for today's training. Today, as I mentioned in the email, is seriously one of my favorite days. Hi, Lucy. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome from London. Oh, fantastic. Yay. Okay. Fabuloso. I love today because today's a data day. And as you know from the beginning of our Self-Management for Actors 20-day series, SMF May, I'm all about the data because I find that artists, creatives, in showbiz and even out of showbiz often get told a bunch of bullshit when it comes to the rules. And the coolest part about data and pattern tracking is that you can use the data to disprove any actor myth that's out there. Any rule that exists about how it's got to be a certain kind of way, you can actually go to the data and either verify that that is in fact the way something has to be done, or find proof that that ain't at all how things have to be done. And that is part of what I love about self-management for actors, is that word that I want you to emphasize in self-management for actors is self. The journey is going to be different for every single person going on the journey through showbiz or any other creative storytelling career, because there are going to be things that work for you that don't work for someone else, and vice versa. And there are going to be things that worked for you at one tier that won't work for you at another. And so one of the things that I want to make sure that we dig into today, because we're about to charge into some of the meatiest stuff in this free training series. Tomorrow and Monday, we're going to be doing a lot of targeting work. And so I'm going to get specific about how to target the buyers along this path to your true north. And so if you're like, I don't know what you're doing with your hand there, please head over to bonniegillespie.com/20, where you will be able to sign up for updates when we're going live, as well as notifications when there are replays available, and of course the playlist of all of the free episodes in this training series throughout the month of May and beyond. The recordings will exist beyond. The information that I want you to glean from day 1, video 1, is that true north, that point that you set a pin in up here, is going to dictate the choices that you make to move along some kind of path or combination of paths to get to that place. And there are certain buyers and certain co-conspirators. So let's say there are agents, there are managers, there are writers, directors, fellow actors, as well as, of course, casting directors, producers, directors that live on any one of the paths that you could take to get from where you currently sit to your true north. And then there's all the other buyers that live over here that actually don't help you get any farther up your path. And so part of the reason today's foundation for data gathering is so valuable is because you'll be able to determine by targeting whether or not a project or a relationship is one that you're investing in because it absolutely is on this path, or because it's not on that path at all, but it feels like something fun I'd like to do. Because I'm not saying only relationships that lead to this work up here at the True North have value. What I'm saying is that you can be discerning in your decision-making process about what jobs you'll say yes to when you're ready to leave a certain tier. You may continue to work at that lower tier if it is a relationship builder along this path. Whereas if you have an opportunity to work at your current tier or lower down here with somebody that does not at all lead to your true north eventual dream storytelling space in the world, why would you invest time and energy in that that's taking time and energy away from something else you could be doing that moves you along that path faster? And so it's not that there's anything wrong with choosing to invest energy down here. It's just then you can't come complaining to me about how long it took to get from where you currently sit up to that true north if you're the one who decided to take all the damn detours. So go into it knowing what you're doing. That's why targeting is so important. So go back to day one, watch the true north video, make sure that you are very clear on what that point looks like, and be willing to check under the hood every now and then, to make sure that you still connect to that vision, because recalibration is a part of any journey, and there's nothing wrong with having experiences in life change the flavor of what that true north storytelling point looks like at any given time. You don't want to get out and survey your map at every single turn in the journey. You'll never get there. But there are certain checkpoints and benchmarks along the way where you do want to make some recalibration. So what today is all about is making sure that you understand those tiers, because as I mentioned, something that worked for you at one tier may no longer work for you at another tier. And that doesn't mean that the strategy has now failed you. It doesn't mean that it is now a bad idea. It means that your needs have changed. You are now at a different tier. You now have a different relationship with your buyers. You're now farther along on your journey. This could actually mean that you have to reassess some of the tactics in order to get the same kind of results or better. And so learning how to do the targeting work and getting very clear on what it means at the different levels is incredibly important to your ability to stay nimble along your showbiz career. And so this is why when people come to me for private coaching and say, can you just tell me my type? Can you just tell me my targets? Can you just refer me to an agent who will get me in the rooms that I need to be in? I am like, I would never take all that power away from you, because your power comes from your ability to do the work and determine who at any given time in your journey is the best fit rep and the best fit casting office and the best fit director and writer and fellow actor to be spending your energy and time with. So why would I steal that part of your journey from you? Just to make myself feel important and guru-esque, which y'all know, if you don't, go read my article on how I am not into guru hunting. And I think that it's actually a really poisonous thing that happens in showbiz, giving away an awful lot of power. If you are searching someone out to just answer the questions for you, you're never going to be able to get very far with that, because someone who can tell you, oh, well, these are your targets today, and this is your agent, your dream agent today for these targets at this current tier, is not going to be standing next to you 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, when you need to ask those questions all over again and make sure that you're still with the right fit people for your next tier goals. So this is why we learn the targeting work. So I'm going to talk about tiers. I'm going to talk about show Bibling, and let me explain my definition of show Bible, which I know is different from the actual industry definition of show Bible. And honestly, y'all, if I had known the phrase, the way I use it, was going to take off to the extent that it did, I would have picked a different phrase. I would have named it something that's within the world of self-management for actors, trademark, or whatever. But I have always called it my show Bible. So that's what I refer to it when I started teaching it to you guys. Your show Bible is essentially something you already keep in your brain all the time. Your show Bible is that list of every relationship, every director, every writer, every producer, every casting director, every casting assistant, every casting associate, every agent, every agent's assistant, every showrunner, every fellow actor, every coach that you've ever had or ever encountered or ever hoped to jam with. And so it is a wish list of people that you hope you'll work with someday. It is an existing list of everybody that you have ever worked with and hope to work with again. And it's also a list of all those fuckers that you're like, I could just never work with that person again and be fine. But that person remains in your show Bible because you don't want to go, why is this name familiar, when you're reading a random breakdown years later and then go, I can't figure out why this name is familiar. And then you submit on the project and then you get cast in it and realize the reason that producer's name was familiar is because he still owes you 10 grand from the last time you worked for him. And he's just changed his production company name to be able to skate that financial commitment for that project that you gave your heart to all those years ago. Don't want that to happen. Therefore, show Bible. So the show Bible is the thing that you keep going in your brain all the time. And by formalizing it and actually putting your lists of relationships into a physical form, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet or Evernote or Airtable. We've got people who do it in Notion or Asana. There are all sorts of Trello, different apps that exist out there. And of course, technology is a moving target. So as soon as I say this, there's going to be another 10 apps that might be better. But whether it's that or a notebook where you just write shit down, your ability to keep up with the relationship management part of your career, your ability to wield that show Bible for the power that it actually potentially has, all comes from your ability to get it out into a form that is more manageable than in your brain. Because in your brain, the connections start to weaken over time. Or you have to keep it on loop in order to not weaken that information. And so by getting it out into a physical space so that you can just trust, I have that information. I remember which headshot photographer was all inappropriate and I never again want to shoot with that guy. You don't ever have to keep that in your brain. You now have it in your show Bible, and you know the next time you're looking at a photo gallery thinking it's time for new headshots and you go, ooh, hang on, spidey sense is tingling, trust my gut, go look it up in the show Bible and go, oh, yep, it's that one. Nuh-uh. Not shooting there. And that type of information, that type of ability to see the connections between people, the web of trust that you have, the existing relationships that already live in your life and in your brain, seeing them out on note cards or whatever system works for you is incredibly powerful, because then you start to connect with people in a more mindful way. When you are in someone's office, you're not like creeping them out going, let me detail all the times I've ever read for you in the past or all the things that I wore every time I've been into your office. However, you consult your show Bible for what a certain casting office is like, what the tone is like, what the vibe is like in that room, because you recorded it all after your first audition in there. So you have everything from how much extra time to give yourself for parking to, oh my God, don't wear perfume, because you heard there was somebody in the waiting room who had on perfume and they made her go into the restroom and like scrub down because they were allergic or whatever. Like, and these are types of things that you can note so that when you next go in for your audition or submit, you are already empowered with information that draws that connection closer in, and it makes you realize that the industry is a lot smaller than you might think it is. And this is true for every tier. And so now we're going to talk about the tiers specifically, because you're going to start in doing the data wrangling that comes with targeting over the next 2 days of this free training. You are going to start filling in information in your show Bible that lives at all sorts of points on these paths. So here's where you currently sit. This is your true north. We have a few different ways we can go from getting from here to up here, right? There's like several different ways, just like in Google Maps, that we can get there. So there are several different people that we can encounter depending on which route we take. But at certain tiers, no matter what, if this is your true north, there's somebody that you're going to have to work with when you get way up here, because that person is integral to your ability to book the work that is your life's work, that story you were born to tell. So that positioning does become important. The question is, how do you get to this relationship? Is it this route, or is it this route, or is it this route? But what we know for sure is it's not any of these routes. So mapping all of this out on the show Bible throughout the various tiers that you're going to encounter is going to be extremely beneficial for you, and your show Bible becomes more powerful over time. Because after a couple of years of having kept up a show Bible, you have a strong muscle for doing it. Like recording this information is just no big deal. And then looking it up, you're able to see a history and a trajectory other people are going on. You're able to see the direction that your peer group is traveling. And then you can start to see if you're investing yourself in relationships with people who are similar to you, heading up through the tiers toward this true north of yours. Or if you are anchored by holding yourself down with friendships and relationships and colleagueships of people who just want to sit around and complain, who never want to shoot their own shit. They never want to improve their footage. They're not showing up for free trainings like this, no matter how many times you tag them, invite them, share the emails, whatever, because they got something else better to do even than to come back and watch the replay and ask questions in the Facebook version of the replay, where I'm sweeping by every few hours and continuing to answer the questions that are there. And if they can't be bothered to do that, but they're going to throw infinite money at casting director workshops or postcards or production facilities to shoot manufactured footage, when you can see that the people that they need to be building relationships with actually value stuff like self-shot footage or an improv jam or open mic night, or everybody's into something that's going on at a very specific theater, and becoming a part of that theater company then becomes something on your radar that maybe doesn't work for you at this tier, but maybe it does on the next tier. These types of predictive things that you're able to do as your show Bible gets stronger and more powerful and the patterns get clearer over the years is what's going to make you say, oh my God, I am so grateful I started formalizing this. And even if I didn't do it the first time Bonnie told me to, I did it the 317th time Bonnie told me to, and thank God I finally did it. So please consider mapping out just the relationships you currently have. Who have you trained with? Who have you shot with? Who are your colleagues? Who are your classmates? These are all people that are in your web of trust. And then there's also the people that are way up here at the goal area. And we need to fill in all the people in between and start mapping out those webs of trust. If you don't know what web of trust is, Google Bonnie Gillespie web of trust, or just go to my website and look up that article. It's also, of course, a section in this book. Your web of trust has everything to do with how you build healthy relationships with the people who are already in relationships with other people you're connecting with. Because it's not just who knows you or who you know, it's who they know. And that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game, there's a version of it that's 6 degrees of Bonnie Gillespie. There are so many people who tag me regularly, or they put up the hashtag SMFA Ninjas when they are on set or at a play reading or at an industry event, a red carpet, networking function, whatever, to let me know, oh, look, I just hooked up with a fellow ninja. And the thing that they have in common is they studied with me, or they trained with me, or they met in our Facebook group. And it doesn't even have to be something as formal as having trained together. But that connection, that relationship, that common culture makes the whole town smaller. And I mean that from a non-geographical sense, the entire industry smaller. So let's do a quick definition of the tiers, and then I'll see what kinds of questions that you might have. We are going to start with what a lot of people like to call tier 0. I'm not quite a fan of that label, but y'all like to call it that, so I'm not going to stop you. But this is where you're working for free. This is copy credit meals. This is pre-union work. This is usually a lot of student films, deferred pay projects where deferred is just code for ain't anybody ever getting paid. I'm still waiting for deferred paid projects from the 90s when I was still an actor. And I guess I'll keep waiting. But, it's the tier where you are paying your dues, you're learning your stuff, you are experimenting with student filmmakers who are learning the equipment and learning how to run a professional set, and you are learning how to be a professional on a set. So it's a pretty balanced relationship at first. Problem is, you can get stuck at the copy credit meals tier your entire career until you learn to say no to the offers. So part of your work as an actor is being aware of when you have enough momentum going that you don't need to prove anything at copy credit meals tier 0 work anymore. You got enough pre-union stuff. You got enough deferred pay stuff. You got enough working for footage stuff. You've done that. And you've done that to a large enough role that you feel like it's time to graduate. And you have to be the one to set that limit, because there is no end to the number of people who will ask you to work for free. I started casting in 2003, and I am still regularly contacted by new producers, new directors who heard I am a great casting director to work with for people at the beginning of their career as filmmakers. And I am, but they are thinking of 2003 me or 2006 me or even 2010 me, who they might have been able to afford. But my floor for casting work now is so high that beginner filmmakers can't afford me. And that's not because I don't enjoy the process of helping and educating and working with people who are learning the ropes. It's because I have a different set of career goals for where I am and what tier I am on. And when I do say yes to casting anything or even being a consultant on projects, it is with a very critical eye toward the relationship building and the cred that I think it'll give me, way beyond what the financial element is. But that's a higher tier conversation. When I was at the beginning of my casting career, I had to do copy credit meals casting too. My first feature film, I cast for $100. Seriously, I think they bought me lunch twice and paid for parking one time. But I cast for 6 weeks, 13 speaking roles on a feature film and made $100. So everybody goes through that. Next tier up from there is going to be usually paid work. So no more copy credit meals. This can still be pre-union, but more likely it's union eligible. It's going to be stuff now where you're saying yes to something that maybe doesn't pay, but it pays in the ability to further your goal of being a professional actor. And professional meaning like deemed by the unions as a professional member, a member of the professional actors unions. And so this, of course, also translates to paid work. It means that you are working in certain conditions that have certain minimums that are mandated by the unions. This tier will include that first co-star, that first speaking role on a network show, which of course would then be a major jump to go from copy credit meals to paid. Let's put a little tier in between that. That's like paid indie work. And things that maybe you can get some momentum on, things that are going to festivals and things that are very definitely leading to your union membership, and the deferred status is less iffy. It's like for sure you're going to get paid. You'll get paid like $100, $200 just for being there, and then there may be money later. But there's definitely some festival cred going on. You're getting larger roles in these things. Then after that, the tier above that is going to be that network level co-star, that indie film in which you have such a large role that you could not have been edited out of it. Like it's your story, or you are a large enough supporting role that you feel like that was a significant presence and that actually had some shift in your career that started to come as a result of having been in that project at that level. This is where if you work at a co-star level, similarly to that tier 0 copy credit meals place, you can get into a career co-star space, and especially if you are with an agent that is known for co-stars, they have no interest in seeing you graduate to guest stars. In your mind, co-star is just a step among many to where you actually want to go. And that co-star, that one-liner, that one scene is just a beginning to what will be a big, healthy, on-camera, hopefully television and studio film level project career, right? So if you, however, get with an agent that is known for having nothing but co-stars on their roster, you are now going to live at that tier, because that agent has no interest in pushing against that steady co-star stream of income. it works. There are plenty of agents, especially in large markets like Los Angeles, New York, London, where there are agencies that's just what they specialize in. And, no shade, make your money the way you want. But the actor needs to know through the targeting process, which is what we're working on for the next couple of days here, that is the agent at which they've landed, and that they will at some point have to graduate from that agency. So part of moving from the co-star tier to the guest star tier can include an upgrade in agents. It could be that you're just with an agent that will not grow with you to the guest star level. That said, there are plenty of agencies out there where you can go from co-star to guest star, but you will know that through doing the self-management for actors targeting homework over the next couple of days. So this is all information that in just a couple of days, you're going to be like, I now know. I know that this is the agency that I need next, and this is the agency that I need after that. And more importantly, you're going to be able to say, based on my targets, I know that this is the agency that is going to take me the longest stretch up my path to my true north. So to get with them, I need to do some recon on who people were with before they signed there. And all of this is stuff that we can map out using data. So we're going to do all of that together, and we're going to be able to track where you need to park yourself for whatever tier you're currently at based on the timeline for your goals to getting to the next tier. Once you've graduated to guest star, you're probably also doing larger roles in larger budget films. You are exclusively working union. You are probably working above quote. What that means is, or above scale, which means that you have a quote as an actor that is higher than the union scale, which is considered minimum wage for the performances. So for like a network co-star typically would shoot one day. I think in general you get paid like $1,000, $1,200, $1,300, something like that. And a guest star typically is booked as a week, but it's a 4-day week, but you are booked out for the whole week in case they need you for pickups or reshoots or anything like that. But you're basically only working 4 days, and then that's like a 10 grand, 11 grand, 12 grand, 13 grand week, 4 days. So if you are over scale, then perhaps you're making 20 grand. For a single episode as a guest star. And if you're listening to this going, ooh, that sounds really good, well, then come back to what I said about that. There's no end to the number of people who will ask you to work for free element, and be sure that you are disciplined at knowing when to say no so that you can, again, you have to say no to the co-stars to start working guest stars. When we can talk some more about strategies for that as we get into the Q&A. But next tier above that, then we're getting into like recurring. I am now a known commodity. I am working regularly in repeat performances for certain series or for certain filmmakers. I am always on the list to be brought in for auditions for projects that are going through this casting office because they just are always going to be looking for me. My agents and that casting office have a really great relationship, and there's no question that I'm going to be brought in if there's anything that I could possibly be right for. And then from there, we move into now my name is getting on lists during pilot season. Perhaps there are some network suits having meetings about me before I ever even know it. You may then actually have, for the first time in your life, a real pilot season. Keep in mind, most people, by the time they experience their first real pilot season, have been at this in Los Angeles for a decade. It can happen sooner, but typically the momentum required to get your name on those kinds of lists in those kinds of offices consistently enough that you start getting brought in and tested at network for pilots, it takes a half dozen to a dozen years easily. Because it's a relationship building process. Now, it doesn't have to take that long. We can make it happen faster, and that's part of why we do the self-management for actors work. I'm just letting you know, traditionally that seems to be the timeline that I see pay out or pay off and play out the most frequently. From there, of course, once you are a known commodity and you've tested at network, whether you landed a pilot or not, you are brought in on studio projects. You are now given straight offers. You oftentimes don't have to audition at all. You simply read scripts and make a decision on whether or not you want to do it. And at this point, you still may not be a household name. you still may not be considered a name actor. You are what we call in casting a qualified name, which means people outside the industry would know who you are. If I said, oh, you know her, she's on the movie blah blah, or she was in that TV series blah blah, you would go, oh yeah, I know her, but she's not somebody that you would consider a celebrity name. And that classification would be then the highest tier, and this is where a lot of people go when they're planning out their true north, and I encourage you to back off from that a little bit, just in terms of understanding the level of tools and tactics and strategies that work at that certain tier. When we're talking elite name actor, celebrity level stuff, there are only 1,600 human beings on the planet that are classified name actors. So it is a very small population. And the average working actor can walk through life not being hounded for autographs, not being sought out for autographs. Occasionally TMZ is going to be checking what they're up to because probably a publicist rigged it. Y'all do know that that's all prearranged stuff, right? Nobody's ever caught doing anything. It's always strategized and scheduled for the maximum impact for the story. So in general, if you can consider that being a working actor actually just means that about a third of the year you are on sets or rehearsing for projects that are going to be shooting, and still 2/3 of the year you're out of work. But making enough money in that third of the year that everybody in your life is taken care of, as if you had, worked a full-time desk job for 40 years. So, yeah, you. Questions that you might have. We're going a little bit over on the 30-minute mark with this one, which I figured we might because there's a lot here when it comes to really wrapping your brain around what a show Bible is and its value, and then understanding those tiers, and then hopefully seeing the benefit to wrangling any kind of data we can to help spell out where your most empowered moves are going to come next, using all of this information. Melissa says, is it possible nowadays to have a career like Bill Murray and not be repped? Sure, but he is repped. He has attorneys. So, when I've made offers to Bill Murray on projects that I've cast, it's been a few years, but, he still has people. So, there was a time that he did it through like an 800 number, and you would just telephone the offer and the script and hopefully send over a script, and hopefully he would show up to shoot. And that, of course, is the stuff that legends are made of. But Melissa, I'll encourage you to not look for a one person example of a bizarre anomaly and ask, might that be true for me too? Or is that possible for someone like me watching this today? And instead look for the hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of pieces of data that exist surrounding your average working actor and what her experience is like, and look to that for the patterns and understand what is in common for you there, rather than picking out that anomaly. That's like saying, I'm going to be a doctor. Will I find a cure for cancer? Well, no one has. I think it's a great goal. I want to be a doctor/researcher who does enough in the cancer territory that I make some progress. Possibly. Far more likely, it's not. Because it's just not like, I'm going to be an astronaut. Am I going to go to Mars? Probably not. There are hundreds of astronauts who do nothing like that. And so I would really ask you to not focus on the bright, shiny anomaly, but instead the massive amounts of data that exist for what is far more normal. Another thing that I would like to encourage everybody here, because this is a place where a lot of times advice gets really aggressive, and people will say, oh, it's got to be like this, or here's the way it's got to be, or like, you got to go to this casting director workshop, or you have to be with this agent, or whatever, like the rules, you have to have a slate shot, you have to have this many headshots, you have to, whatever. I use this as a measurement. If the person saying, you have to do this, has the IMDb page of my dreams, I keep listening. It doesn't mean I take their advice. It just means I keep listening, because maybe they have something interesting to say. But if that jackass is sitting there with an IMDb page that when you look at it, you're like, not my goal, not like you are not my pace car. You are not the lighthouse shining for me about how it can be done. You just some schmo trying stuff too. Then be careful how much weight you put into the advice. Advice culture in general can be a little sticky. It's part of why I try to steer away from the advice thing and say, what does the data show you? So when someone comes to me and says, am I this type or am I that type? I'm like, what is the data saying? And they're like, well, I don't know. I only got 12 people to answer my survey. And then I'm like, well, then you need more people to answer your survey. We need more data. The data will tell us. Let's let it have the power that it has. Freddie wants to know, this is from over at YouTube, if you find a co-star agency, is a 1-year contract typical? Yeah, in general, agency contracts are a year. Management contracts are generally 3 years because it takes a little bit longer for their investment to show. And so they tend to sign you on for a longer contract. And that works for the management relationship for most people. But yes, a 1-year contract with a co-star level agency is great because at the end of that year, you either have enough momentum that you're ready to graduate on to your guest star level agency, or things are going so well that you don't mind signing on for an additional year, but you can negotiate it from a position of power a year later. So right on. Cool. Bradley, Nicole is so cool with qualified name. Perfect. Good. Good. Fabulous. Fabulous. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else here. Nadine, I'm so over tier 0, but humbled for the opportunity. Got to start somewhere. Nadine, we do. I mean, I'm doing a brand expansion myself this year where I'm branching out beyond working with folks in showbiz for the first time in 20 years. I mean, obviously I've worked with non-showbiz people over the past 20 years, but I am now going to formalize some offerings for non-showbiz folks. I mean, I guess showbiz folks could still be a part of the new things that we're creating, but I am looking at that and going, oh man, how much tier 0 stuff do I now have to do with this new audience? Or with this new position because I, did a certain amount of tier jumping in my showbiz career. And then, where are we now with this new direction? And so that's actually a question to ask yourself is like, how much time does need to be invested there before you're able to go, you know what, that's enough. We now have, we've proven that there's good body of work here. And I now need to get paid and I now need to get union status and I now need to get higher billing. Like these are things that actually become part of your leverage in moving through the tiers faster. So it really just takes that resting state of enoughness and knowing when you feel safe that you're okay to start saying no to stuff because it's scary. The first time I said no to casting projects, I was just like, they're never going to come again. And I'm like, they come even more because I'm picky. And that being picky is actually a really great quality when it comes to what you're willing to do in the world with your creative gifts. Lucy says, moving from co-star, this is from over at Facebook, moving from co-star to guest star, have one really decent guest star, almost finished filming, booking co-stars at the same time that fit in with dates. Is it okay, or do I risk muddying how I'm perceived? Lucy, every time you say yes to co-star, you are making the guest star look like a fluke if you only have the one guest star. And so what's important to do is start saying yes to co-stars that are willing to bill you as guest stars. And this is something that your agents can negotiate. They just have to say, we don't need any extra money, so we're not going to blow your budget, but we need you to bill this role as a guest star instead of a co-star, because right now you get more out of that billing than you do out of the dollars, especially since you were going to say yes to it as a co-star anyway. It's time for you to start leveraging that, because if you keep surrounding one guest star with a bunch more co-stars, it looks like the guest star was a fluke rather than a normal growth out of which you stop doing the co-stars because you move on. Like, think of it like graduating. If you are in college but you keep taking high school classes, girl, you're still in high school. I don't care if you go to college to do it. You're taking high school classes. So just think like that. Hopefully that'll help frame it for you. All right. It's so hard to say no, says Melissa, but I'm getting better at it. You'll find when your resting enoughness state isn't in question, it gets a lot easier, because you don't conflate your self-worth or your values how you value yourself with saying yes to a project or someone else validating you. Stephanie says, you just made being picky and saying no sound so empowering an option. Yes. Yes, because it is. Because it is. And think of it as being choosy. You are informing your next buyer what you're willing to say yes to. And if you have a track record of saying yes to really high quality, cool, interesting projects that even when they're unpaid, they are so interesting that says something about your picker. You're the kind of person someone wants to invest in, because you saying yes to them is a feather in their cap. It makes them look that much better because you chose to say yes to them after having said no to other lesser things. Think about that. You're inviting each person you collaborate with in the future to become a part of a fraternity, and you are watering down the quality of that frat every time you say yes to something that you really didn't want to do with people that you really didn't want to work with, just because you felt like you had to or you needed the footage. Make your own footage. Be picky. Be picky. Angelica says, this is over at Facebook, how important is your brand at the beginning of your career when you're trying to get to tier 1? Angelica, I'm going to ask you to take a look at an article, which my team can put it here in the links if it's available, and if not, I'll circle back around and do it, that's called Passport Credits. There is a time when you need to collect a stamp on your passport. Basically, it's that first yes at the new tier. And getting that passport credit is the thing that says, okay, now you're free to work in this area. You are good to work at this tier. And there is value to a passport credit in a way that doesn't have as much to do with your brand. And so there are times when feeling a little murky about your brand, you might be okay, but getting clear on the brand story you want to tell is incredibly important, because you want people from the beginning to invest in that. And you don't want to be so all over the map that they get wrong how they're supposed to read you. Because especially if you're building relationships, go back to the show Bible, if you're building relationships with people that you are going to continue to get cast by for decades, it is important that you're telling them the brand story of who you want to be up here from right now. Because if you're telling them, well, I can basically do anything, and they can't see this future in you right now, they may take you in a different direction than your true north. And you can't be mad at them for that. You let them. You showed them that version of you. So just make sure that if you are a little less specific than I would like you to be in your brand, that you don't spend too much time trying to be all over the place just to score that first passport credit at each tier. But that'll help, I think. Go read that. And thank you. My team has put the link in over at Facebook, and the Facebook comments remain open throughout all the replays. We're going to end on this. David, hello, darling. Little show Bible love. I kept names from projects 4 years ago that opened up doors across the country to be in New York now, working on a show for 2 months. Facts, it works. David, thank you. I didn't even pay him to say that. I totally didn't. Thank you. Thank you, beautiful people. We went over today. I appreciate you hanging out for the longer broadcast. Tomorrow we will be back diving in on targeting. We're going to talk about targeting shows, targeting films, targeting commercials, targeting plays. We're going to get into all of it. Homework, because then the next targeting day, which is Monday, is going to be on rep targeting. If you are like chomping at the bit and cannot wait to do this and want to watch more of me, go find the video, How to Get an Agent. It's a very popular featured vid of mine at YouTube and also in the Facebook replays. But if you just put in Bonnie Gillespie, How to Get an Agent, it's a 75-minute Facebook Live that I did a couple years back where I walk you through the targeting process. Because as a part of SMF May, I'm not going to step you through the entire targeting process using IMDb Pro, but that lesson is out there and it's free, so please go get it. And for those of you who are already planning to join us for the 100 days, we of course go much deeper into this there. And for those of you who have already enrolled in the 100 days for SMFA Summer School and getting gear for the next tier live, please make sure you dive in on that welcome kit. We have some fantastic resources for you on how to start strong. In fact, my team can throw the link in here over at Facebook to the main page for getting gear for the next tier, because the welcome kit is available on that page. So even if you're not enrolled in getting gear for the next tier or not even planning to, go grab that welcome kit, because I give you some fantastic tips on how to start strong with creating any kind of lasting change in your life. And of course, for those of you who are already joining me inside the dojo, let's jam. I will see you in the comments over there in the membership area. And anybody, of course, who has any questions, let me know. And I hope you're applying for the scholarship if you've been thinking about joining us, but are thinking maybe a scholarship would feel nice to you. I mean, why wouldn't it? All the information remains at bonniegillespie.com/20. I will put that link up here one last time for those of you watching on Instagram. It's the link in my bio. Thank you, beautiful people. I can't wait to do this again tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. Oh my God, it's SMF May. Thank you for joining me. Till next time, stay ninja. Mwah. Yay! Woohoo!